Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, so much has changed in the world over the last 2 years, and as people increasingly talk about the Great Resignation, I think one of the trends that I'm seeing is, for the most part, people just no longer want to be doing repetitive, mundane tasks day after day, clock watching. Why not let the machines do all that robotic stuff and set employees free from a robotic life so they can focus on their human skills, such as creativity, innovation, empathy, strategy, and focusing on adding value to the business rather than staring at a spreadsheet or just repeating the same thing over and over again. And rather than have humans and machines competing for work or competing for jobs, they should actually be complementing each other. And this is a school of thought that I wanted to talk about today. This led me to UiPath, a leading enterprise automation company that offers an end-to-end platform for automation, combining a robotic process automation solution, or RPA for those in the know. And this is also leveraging the power of artificial intelligence. And I wanted to find out more. So, the big question, of course, is how can you harness the power of RPA, revolutionise your business, and most importantly, ensure that your employees do not get left behind? Well, buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Amsterdam, where Renzo Taal from UiPath is going to talk about all this and much more. So, a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Well, good day, Neil, and thank you very much for having me today. So my name is Renzo Taal, and I lead our UiPath EMEA business based out of Amsterdam.
Fantastic. And before we learn more about everything that you're doing there and the success that you've achieved, I always like to take my guests back in time and try and learn a little bit more about how you got here. So what is your origin story? Where did your passion for tech come from? Or what lit the spark and put that path what you're on right now?
Well, it started at a university. I was actually working at a university, working for one of the professors, and it became pretty apparent that, in 1999, 1998, tech, or e-commerce as we called it at that point in time, was going to be transformational. And you could see the power of what technology could do, what the internet could do, how universities were transforming some of their learning path. I mean, this is early days, but you could clearly see the impact. And, little did I know it was kind of the start of what we call these days the fourth industrial revolution. And what technology already started doing in 1999 and 2000 was having profound impact on business models. And the second I saw that happening on insurance companies, on, fast-moving consumer goods companies, on traditional industries, just small things, you could see the impact of technology. And that's where the passion started. And it took me globally through the world, living in China and Shanghai, to Singapore, to the US, in the Netherlands, and Brussels, and Belgium. So it's given me a lot of things in return as well, seeing the world and seeing how society has changed and being part of this super exciting force, the Industrial Revolution.
Awesome. What a great story. And I love asking that just to find out the kind of journey that you've been on and where it all come, what lit the spark in you. But of course, it was that path that led you to UiPath. And for people that are hearing about UiPath for the first time, could you just offer maybe an overview of how you're accelerating human achievement, but via an AI-enhanced end-to-end automation platform? Sounds incredibly cool, but can you just expand on that?
I believe there's two different versions of tech companies. There's tech companies which are paradigm shifting on IT and technology being delivered, and you got companies which are accelerating that path. And if you look back in history, right, if you look back in Microsoft and Intel, right, the Wintel revolution, if you look at Google and search, if you look at Facebook and social, if you look at VMware and cloud and cloud computing, and if you look at Salesforce on a new business model with SaaS, these are companies which have massively impacted a paradigm shift on IT technology being delivered. And then UiPath, I believe that's this category and this company is going to do the same, or is actually doing the same thing. And the reason why it's doing that is since 2000, there's enormous amounts of investments being done in technology, but productivity of human has actually decreased. And this technology, what we call RPA-AI, this automation platform, has the power to massively impact and take away all of these mundane tasks, which humans are doing. So that's what we're doing as a company. And that's how I believe, this category and this company is profoundly, impacting and being a, paradigm shifting company versus an acceleration company, or kind of a company which just moves along, so to say.
And I'm curious, as someone that's right in the heart of this space, so much has happened in the last 2 years. So how have you noticed attitudes changing towards automation since the pandemic and, of course, the great resignation that everyone's talking about right now? Because it feels like before the pandemic, automation was almost like a dirty word, whereas now things have completely changed.
So not only automation, I would say digitalization.
Yeah.
And, the reality of what happened with COVID, of course, next to all of the human tragedy and the impact what it's had on our lives and our youngsters and our kids and not being able to go to school and having to be digitalized, it also did a lot of good things. And it basically exposed companies which were, a little bit digitizing, but they were picking and choosing. Now all of a sudden, you can't even exist as a company anymore if you don't have digital signatures, or if you've got end-to-end processes which are automated. Or if you are able to kind of, have work or things being done which are separately from location based on where the work is being done itself. So what COVID has forced companies to do is not just, tipping into digitalization or automation, but you have to automate. Now, to your second question around the great resignation, I would just look at it a little bit differently. Companies are using automation as an internal recruitment engine. And I love the example of, a company in which we've been doing business with for quite some time, and the CFO, and he embraced automation, and he said, actually, the automation has become one of our biggest opportunities to recruit internally. We've been able to automate so many tasks and liberate kind of, some folks of that and putting them where we believe they can add more value and actually where they're having more fun. Because what tends to happen is they're doing a lot of mundane tasks, repeatable tasks, which humans don't really always want to do. Humans are good at empathy, creativity, problem solving, and doing things automatically. A robot can do it much better. So I would say it's not about the great resignation; it's about the great redeployment of work, and where work is being done, and where work is going to be created.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's freeing people from robotic tasks and allowing them to focus on those human tasks. And I was chatting to a company in Australia and another one in New Zealand recently, and they've both been telling me that there are currently, I think, 3 million unfilled cybersecurity roles in APAC. And there are, I think, there are 4 jobs for every 1 qualified person in cybersecurity. And as a result, companies are taking something like 6 months to recruit students, and contract rates over there are something like $2,000 a day. And again, going into everything that you just mentioned now, it's all about upskilling, etc. So do you have any tips on best implementing automation, upskilling and reskilling programs, especially considering the current job market? Because that is what it's all about, isn't it? That continuous learning.
Yeah. So I think there's two parts of this. So if you ask, or kind of the answer to the question, how can you best start?
Yeah.
It really starts with a beginner's mind. Right. And to be open, because a lot of companies don't know what they don't know around automation. And it's just not automating just a mundane task, because that's a given, right? You can do that. And still there's huge amount of upside and huge amount of impact which you can create. And these days with our kind of end-to-end automated platform, kind of, this enterprise automation platform, we now also have capabilities such as what we call attendant robots, which is like a Siri, so to say, or a Alexa on steroids, right? But really helping you to be there alongside, learning what you're doing, and being a very smart robot, and taking these tasks out of your hands while you're kind of working on day to day. But we can talk about it a little bit separately later. The second one is, I think you're bringing up an excellent point, is reskilling.
Yeah.
And there's two parts of that. There's a societal part of it, which is making sure there is no divide on the haves and the have not, or the people who are left behind. But a lot of new jobs are going to be created. And one of the things which I did was with a gentleman called Dr. Michael Fung, who heads up the Skills Future program in Singapore, which I think is one of the best reskilling programs globally. Singapore has seen that it needs to re-educate, unlearn, and re-educate their citizens to be part of this new reality of digitization. But also companies have a responsibility in that. So you need to make sure that as we're creating these massive new jobs, which are going to pay more, which are going to be, more tuned to human, skill sets around what I said earlier around creativity, problem solving, we need to make sure that there's no groups left behind. And I think that's a very, very social impactful, important message. And at UiPath, for instance, one of the things what we've done is we've created this, free learning academy where people can, educate themselves, get certified, and can be part of this super exciting journey, and to become part of this reskilling opportunity which we have. And the second part is around companies' responsibilities. So think around, if you're a company, as I said earlier, around this chemical company, which is now kind of recruited internally because they're moving people around in job bases, it is also the responsibility for companies to make sure that they keep investing in their employees, and because in the end of the day, the employee is the most important asset which you have in a company. That's where, because behind every device, behind every single call, there's a human who wants to talk to another human and solve that and make that connection around a service or a product or whatever it is what you do. So companies need to invest in their employees as well, reskilling them and making them part of this new future.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. If we look back, we have lost a lot of jobs over the last few years, but equally, just 10 years ago, half the jobs that we take for granted now never existed. Things like social media managers, cloud architects, etc. Those roles just didn't exist, and it's just a natural progression, really. And the most important thing, like you said, is investing in people and making sure that nobody gets left behind. So what is the secret, do you think, to retraining and attracting talent with automation education?
So first of all, companies need to understand that this is a reality, and it is like riding gravity if you don't accept this as a fact.
Yeah.
The other one is really making sure that whatever you do, right, the people are the most important. Even in even a UiPath, I always talk around people. Our people are the best. If we can retain the most talent in people, we'll be able to develop the best products, have the best customer insights, to have great relationship with our customers, and to be trusted advisors to them. The rest will come later, and that doesn't matter if you're a technology company or if you're a production company or service company or whatever company you are. People are in the center and in front of everything else, and then it starts with really around kind of accepting it from an executive level. And here's where you see a huge divide. You've got people who are embracing it and who say, look, I might not understand everything, but you know what? I'm willing to learn. And I think the most powerful thing, and I will never forget that, was with a CEO of a large transportation company, or actually an airline. And he said, Renzo, more than 50% of the decisions which we're making is around technology in the boardroom. Yeah, of course, we need to make a decision. We're going to buy an Airbus or a Boeing, and we know, how much fuel, it's tons it burns when it flies from Amsterdam to San Francisco. But more than 50% of the decisions is technology based. And as a CEO, I need to make sure I'm able and capable to ask the right questions and to connect all of these dots and make sure that I'm well informed. And I think that's very powerful for leaders these days, is to make sure that don't worry that you don't understand it, because, we are privileged to be working in technology. So we're constantly being educated on a daily basis. But if you're not, if you're in a more traditional company, then that might not be the case. But have an open mind, beginner's mindset, open it, embrace it, and learn.
And there will be some people listening that will say to both of us, all this sounds nice that we're talking about here. Maybe it's a little bit idealistic and it's not as easy as we make it sound. So for those people that want to know how they can do it, do you have any client stories or success stories that you can share to show that it is much easier than people think?
So this CEO, which I just spoke to about, he said, look, can you send me, after work, right, and have some pizza sessions with some of your system consultants or engineers, and I would like to have the younger, brightest ones, and because and the two things would happen was these kids, right, some of these boys and girls which were going there, they were hugely impressed because they can talk to the CEO of a huge company, and he was super inspired because he was talking to these youngsters which are full of ambition and kind of see the future on how technology works. So sometimes it's as easy as that, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the other one, there are these days, there are courses, but it starts with being an inquisitive mind. And this was a very practical example. He sat down, he asked some of his partners and vendors to come up and educate them and have that dialogue. And that's what happened.
And everything we're talking about here resonates with me here in the UK, yourself in Amsterdam, and indeed everyone listening anywhere in the world. But I'm curious, from all the conversations you're having with your customers, are there any trends that you're seeing right now around facing similar challenges, regardless of what industry they're in?
So one common challenge for sure is talent.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a talent crunch. And then if you look at that or kind of understand what that challenge then is, it's really around the digital capabilities. That's where every single company is struggling with. How can I have the talent? How do I retain them? And how do I make sure, I'm future proof? And this comes back to what I said earlier around making sure that you retain your people and you re-educate them. You have to invest in your staff. You can't replace everybody in your company. You'll have to invest in reskilling them and getting them ready for the future in the digital economy. And then one other aspect is, it doesn't really matter if you're in a very traditional company. Every company is being impacted. Every industry is being impacted on digitalization. I've not seen one industry which is completely unaffected. Actually, you see a lot of industries, even companies like shipping industries or transportation industries, embracing digitalization or automation or robotization in a way that I've never seen before, because they can see what the impact could be.
And off the back of that as well, there's so many emerging technologies at the moment. And what excites me is how these emerging technologies are beginning to converge and open up new opportunities. But what emerging technologies excite you, and what's next for UiPath too?
So I think the most interesting industry at this point in time is AI.
Yeah.
And now the problem with AI is that there's a lot of views around it. So one of the views, of course, is around a lot of the Hollywood versions of what AI does. It takes off, robots comes out of this mysterious portal and just kind of take over the world. But the best way I would describe that is, you just don't have to think about it. Things just happen in the background, or they happen on the side. You just don't have to think about it. That's the best way I would describe AI. It gives you an additional insight or an initial kind of, productivity enhancer where it unleashes the human potential to its fullest. That's what you just don't have to think about it. And, just to talk around an example, which you said earlier, around new jobs which are being created, an example of a new job is an AI auditor, because we also need to make sure that this AI it's not biased. It's not, because it is as good as you learn it to be. But the most interesting category or the most interesting technology is absolutely this. This is where it's happening. This is where a lot of the investments are. And this, I believe, and we believe as a company, is going to drive massive impact into productivity and the future of work.
Yeah, I think if we look at things like IoT devices, just about everything can capture unprecedented amounts of data now, and it'll be sent over 5G to a big database somewhere, and AI is uncovering just unbelievable amounts of insights from those data. It's interesting where we're going, incredibly exciting times. But we began the podcast talking about your origin story, and now we've almost come full circle. So I'm going to ask you if there was a song, piece of music, movie or book or anything that has inspired or helped you in your career that you can share with everyone listening and leave everyone on an inspirational note. Do you have a story for us?
I would like to reference to a book which I read, which is a gentleman called Gene Kranz.
Yeah,
and he was the flight operator at the Apollo 13, and he described on what happened and how he led his team when the famous and unfortunately the dramatic words came in, "Houston, we have a problem." And that's been very, very inspiring. And I thought it was very inspiring because you just don't have an option, right? And most of the times people are just going, well, I can do this, and you don't have an option. Time was limited. The constraints were so dramatic, but the way they composed themselves and the way they kind of operated as a team and they problem solved this, I think is one of the, for me personally, I think one of the incredible, pinnacles of human achievement in the way humans are good at, which is no robot can ever kind of replace until now, right? Or the foreseeable future, which is creativity. Right. And I think that interaction with, you got the first computers, which are automating things, we don't have to think about it. Right. It was not intelligent yet, but it did what it had to do. Together with human capabilities of problem solving and being able to collaborate, showed the power of what, human society can bring. That I thought was hugely inspiring. Now, of course, one of the latest books which I read was from Reed Hastings, which is No Rules, together with Aaron Meyer. Fantastic book, really around thinking differently on how to run organizations, why limitations are wrong, how you should reward your best achievers, how to organize your teams, and I thought it was a very inspirational book. Having had classes from Aaron in the past, it's just great to read the back, and I think Reed is just a fantastic leader. So I just wanted to leave with those two books as a source of inspiration.
Wow, I put you on the spot there and put you under a little bit of pressure to find and leave us with something inspirational or something to inspire the listeners. And I think you've overachieved there. That was amazing. Great books there, both of them. I will add them to our Amazon wish list. And for everyone listening that just wants to find out more information about UiPath, maybe explore some of the topics we talked about today, or even contact your team, what's the best starting point?
So the best starting point is always just to, first of all, to go to our website or just send us an email. Or to connect with us, call us, Slack us, or send us through LinkedIn. Anyway, any digital form is always the best to connect with us. I hope we will be able to see each other and meet each other in face-to-face at some point in time, and we'll have customer events, and people are more than welcome to join. Reach out. We will reach out because we're always trying to reach out and find our customers and our future clients, but don't hesitate to connect with us at UiPath through the website. Anyway, digital form available.
Well, I'll add those links to the blog post that will accompany this episode so people can find you nice and easy. I think we've covered a lot in a short amount of time there, from retaining and attracting talent with automation education, the best way to implement automation, upskilling and reskilling programs, and also the current job market and how everything's impacting there. But more than anything, I think it was your very personal story puts the heart of the company on display there, and also sharing us with two inspirational books. So thank you so much for taking the time to share that with me today. Thank you. So I think the big takeaway for me is AI, machine learning, automation, all that stuff. It works better when it's not competing against humans, but complementing them, freeing up humans to focus on value-add activities in areas that robots and machines can never compete. But of course, to get to that place, businesses are going to have to invest in reskilling, upskilling, and training their staff and ensuring that nobody gets left behind. I really do think it's a responsibility of employers, and equally a responsibility of employees to step up and take those opportunities of reskilling and upskilling and future-proof their career. But hey, this is just me talking into a microphone here. So I want to hear your direct insights, experiences, and anything you'd like to share with me. Maybe it's a completely different side of the coin. Maybe get me to think differently about things. Whatever it is, please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes. And you can also email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So you've got plenty of ways you can get in touch with me. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you don't, I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. Maybe there's a different conversation we can have together. But more than anything, just a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.